As popularly said, education is the bedrock of society, and today we'll be unraveling this pulsating heartbeat of society. I am your host, Anari Jaja. We're not just diving into the topic, we're taking a thrilling journey with a beacon of change. Ucy Rochas. Ucy Rochas is a humanitarian, international relations specialist, entrepreneur, and an advocate for free and qualitative education for the African child. She is the Director General of the Rochas Foundation and serves on the board of the Rochas Foundation Incorporation, a non-profit organization which has 13 colleges in Nigeria and has educated over 38,000 less privileged children within 24 years. She is also the CEO of UR Cafe, an upscale cafe, and Walsh Blanche, a property management company. In 2014, Ucy started the Rochas Foundation College of Africa, ROFOCA, under the Rochas Foundation. It is aimed at providing free high school education to less privileged children across Africa while promoting unity in diversity. Currently, the college has covered 21 African countries, selecting children who were displaced and disadvantaged. Presently, 140 African children are being rehabilitated with access to free education, shelter, food, and clothing, while building strong bonds across Africa. Ucy is ardently dedicated to humanity, the fight for every child's rights to comprehensive education, and the unity of Africa. Welcome, Ucy.
Thank you, Anari. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. I really do appreciate you for being here.
Thank you.
Say that again. So today we'll be discussing the effect of quality education in nation building, right? And you are doing so phenomenally well in that educational space. And I know it's more philanthropy, but you chose education as your channel, philanthropy, and that speaks a lot. And so I would like to know, what to you is an ideal educational system?
Anari, thank you once again for having me. An ideal education system is one that's intentional, intentional about the future of the country, the future of the continent. It's one that ensures that it produces a well-rounded child at the end of the day, so a well-rounded student, taking into consideration social skills, actual skills that people need to make a living. It's one that moves with the times in which it finds itself. For example, an ideal educational system for Nigeria or for Africa is one that will consider technology as the bedrock of the educational system in the country, not one that would necessarily focus on other things that are not of the current times, if you know what I mean.
100%, absolutely. And I keep saying this thing, right? I feel like in Nigeria, we're still stuck on this very theoretical curriculum. Right. And I was just looking into liberal arts education now, and then I learned that, that form of education literally covers a whole lot of things. And then it helps. So basically the point of it is to help you build skill, as opposed to generic knowledge. And so what you're saying is really profound. So when you're thinking about skill building, you're also thinking about what era are you in? What is the requirement of your generation now? Which is very important. And I think that, is an important thing that people need to look into, And while we say that, there are clearly educational gaps in the Nigerian system, which needs to be closed up for us to produce skilled and crafted individuals. Yes. So would you like to share to me the gaps that you're in the sector, the gaps you've been able to identify and possibly deal with in your space?
I think the first obvious gap is the lack of adequate infrastructure and resources when it comes to the educational sector. I think that goes without saying. Just to look at our government schools, even some of the private schools, there's just no attention to detail when it comes to education as it has to do with infrastructure and resources. The second would obviously be what I think is just the elephant in the room, and that's the curriculum, right? So our curriculum probably is that of the 1990s, 1980s, and it's suited for that time. The question now is we're in 2023, and the curriculum is no longer providing the demands of the world, the modern world. Just like I said earlier, our curriculum needs to do better. We need to just, to be honest, let's say it nicely, we need to possibly just overhaul the whole thing, or updates everything, which is still an overhaul, but we just need to find a way to ensure that we get it to a stage where you're able to compete with the world, right? Yes. So you produce a student out of Nigeria, they should be able to stand with students across the world, because the curriculum has given them that advantage. 100%.
I'm going to ask, are there forums where educators meet with like the education? I don't know, what's the body for education?
Okay, so that's the third gap. Okay. The third gap in the educational system will just be that public-private collaboration, right? Where, like you said, educators can. I mean, there are platforms people can come together, but as with everything that has to do with education in Nigeria, the fact is that it takes a backseat, right? So the UN suggests that every country, to meet up with the educational standards required, the budget, for example, has to be at least 26% of the national budget should go to education. That is just the minimum, right? 25%. I think the last time I checked. But now you have to look at countries like Nigeria, and it's not just Nigeria, right? Other countries across Africa were operating at like a 5% budget on education. So when people say the Ministry of Education should do better, yes, they should do better. But the truth is, we need the policies to help them do better. Yes. And then we also need a lot of private collaboration with the public sector, with non-governmental organizations, with governmental organizations. It's all hands on deck. It's not a one man solves the whole problem of education. So that's also a gap, right? We need to have such conversations, and people who intentionally write out policies and lobby for change in our curriculum, in the way the students are taught, in just the way we honestly approach education as a whole. Yes.
You know, what you're saying is so profound, because I'm a big educationist, and there's some people that might be watching this and I think, Anari, education? Yes, I'm not theoretical education, but I believe that the power of any nation is in the quality of minds that it produces. Right. And if your educational sector is redundant, you cannot expect the nation to grow.
Absolutely.
Because what forges the mindsets, what forges the information of the people, of the products that you're delivering to the world. And it's really sad that Nigeria is not taking that into proper consideration. And like you said, it's something that needs to be looked out for. But then from you're the one in the educational space now. I'm passionate about it, right? I've not really educated anybody per se in a formal context. My only education is this, in an entertainment way. But in a formal context, I haven't really educated someone. But from the experiences you had, I know that although there's a curriculum, I know that what you do with Rufoka is exceptional. I have seen this children that have come out of there. They are very confident. They're very, well-spoken, eloquent. What is it that you do, in your educational system that sets these children apart? And how does this affect generally nation building to you? How do you think education affects nation building for Nigerians and, Africans?
I think what we've done is with Rochas Foundation as a whole, all the students who come in, first of all, there's one major quote unquote disadvantage that they have, which is that they're from the less privileged homes. This already sets them apart. So the first thing we realize is that you cannot just bring them off the streets, put them in classrooms and expect them to learn English, math, biology. You have to first of all build their confidence, right? So you have to, that's where you now talk about the whole child. So the mental, emotional, balance, right? We ensure that we change their perspective on themselves. And that now allows them to be able to read, to be able to study. But if you just take a child off the street from, say, child hawking, and you put them in a classroom and say, well, you only speak Hausa or you only speak Yoruba, now learn English. The question is why? I mean, the Hausa, the Yoruba is sufficient for me to sell on the street. So why? And you have to let them know that the world is bigger than that slum, that village where they're used to. So the first thing we do in the Rochas Foundation is we work on their mindset, right? And I think that's what's so apt about what you're doing with your platform is the change of any nation doesn't even just start with education or the economy or agriculture. The change of a nation starts with the mindset of its people, right? So we let them know that, okay, you could do better just by being in the four walls of a classroom. The second thing we also do with them is we teach them, yes, the basic subjects, but then we also take them outside the classroom and teach them about life, teach them about humanity. So I'm sure you made reference to Rufoka. You've met with a couple of the Rufoka students. I mean, first of all, I'm going to think right on top of my head that some of them impressed you so well with the way they spoke. Now, you have to understand that English is not their first language. For most of them, Portuguese is their first language. French is their first language. But when they came to that environment, they realized, well, I can add English and that can be an advantage, right? So there's a lot of building up a child from the inside that occurs. We can no longer, as a society, leave the training of a child to the family, right? A family can only train the child as to the depths of knowledge that the mother and father know, right? So when you find an orphan, the question is, who trains the orphan? So we have to take that same mindset into the private sector, into private schools, into government schools. And that now goes to another point, which is teacher training, right? Teachers have to be trained how to teach. We can no longer learn, a teacher says something and you repeat it. I mean, I'm sure you crammed in school. I crammed in school as well. The question is, can we remember today? The answer is no, right? So there has to be a lot of ways. I mean, we see this in the West a lot. We have to teach our children how they would understand, how they would think critically about what they've learned and how they'll be able to apply it, right? I'm sure you've done interviews where you ask a graduate, what did you study and how has it impacted your life? And they'll say, honestly, I just studied a degree because that's what I got. Now that's a failure of the educational system. So we're not providing enough well-rounded individuals, which now makes it seem as if they're unemployable. But then we have unemployment. So why do we have unemployable individuals, right? So the whole problem of the country goes back to the educational system and how we're able to teach them.
100%. You've said so, like, as you're speaking, it's literally hitting every nerve in my system because, to be honest, everything we're doing sits on this, sits on education. And, even when we talk about mindfulness and well-being, you spoke about how, everything starts from the mind. And that is a factor of education. And to incorporate that into the educational system is very key. You go abroad and then you have the guidance and counseling units in an educational system, which is actually functional. I remember going to school in England and I would have downtimes. I left Nigeria early when I was young, maybe just about to become a teenager. And I had a lot of crisis to deal with. I would go and speak to the guidance counseling team at school, and they had the right things to say to me to make me feel, motivated again, to want to go back into school. But in Nigeria, you don't see that. It's either you're a failure or, you are not doing well. And like you said, you can't just, even as much as it applies very strongly to, people from less privileged backgrounds, it applies to children generally. I believe children have a lot of insecurities. They're trying to understand the world. And so when you go and subject them to you pass or you fail, as opposed to getting to hear from them, building their confidence, finding out what they're good at, guiding them. I'll say, okay, I think you're more of an artsy person. I see your personality. I think you'll do well here. Or why are you struggling here? We have this, fail, pass, and it makes for cold people. I think it makes for very angry people. And like you said again, we don't have a form of education that really assesses the educated properly, and then you come and say, this person is not employable. How do you know that? The system that you've set in place makes them look like they're failures in that particular space, or they have to cram to just get past the system, and they have no interest in that. So they probably never even found out what they were good at. And like I said, you saying that literally sends chills down my spine, because it's very core to me, Just to kind of wrap this first segment up, what would you say is the way forward in the Nigerian educational system?
Before I answer the way forward, I'll just dial back on something you had mentioned with the guidance counselor thing. We had that in high school. I went to high school in Abuja. Yeah. We had that there, definitely. The problem with Nigeria and most African countries is that we have a copy and paste mentality, right? And if we copy this Western system of training a child mentally and we paste it to our very different traditional setting, it's frowned upon, right? So it's the reason why if you say today that you want to go see a therapist, the average Nigerian would say, well, should probably start with Yaba, the Yaba place for it, because maybe there's something wrong with you, But the truth of the matter is we don't know how to apply it in our own traditional setting and make it our own, right? Therapy is not a bad thing. Yes. Talking to a guidance counselor in a school should not just be career-based of what do you want to study. Yes. It should be, how did you feel about being bullied, right? But the question is, we don't like that. We don't want our children to be opened up to such vulnerable state because we're afraid of what it would it'll turn them to. So I'll just take an example from the Rochas Foundation. Most of our students, like I said, have, really traumatic backstories and backgrounds. And I encourage them to own up to it. At first, they're very wary of it because it's wrong saying you were molested as a child so you could go to school. It's wrong saying your father killed your mother and that's how you ended up on the streets. These stories are really harsh, but then I need them to be one with their story so that tomorrow someone else cannot use their story as a weapon. And so that they themselves don't weaponize or victimize their own stories, based off that. So for me, the guidance counselor thing is very important, but maybe we need to go to our history, right? We need to go back. That's another problem with the educational system, by the way. We're trying to erase our history because we think we don't need it. And that's a problem, right? We need to know what happened. I need to know why I'm evil. I need to know these questions. I need to know how it came about. We're trying to eliminate that from our history, but then it's important because if not, we have what you call, which don't let me go there, but we have what you call modern day colonization, and it's a new form. It's evident.
We're gonna go there. We're gonna go.
Trust me, we shouldn't, but it's present. So in just the whole guidance counselor thing, I think you've set a challenge now, and it's one that I hope more educators and anyone who's in the educational sector can go and we can come up with a solution. How do we incorporate therapy? Let's just call it that. If you say guidance counselor, it sounds more career path. How do we incorporate therapy into our schools? And how do we ensure the safety of the students after such vulnerable conversations? And once we're able to get past that, then you create very amazing products of the educational system. To your next question, the way forward, I think the way forward is that of a multi-sectoral approach. With that, I mean that all hands have to be on deck. the agricultural sector, the technology sector,
Yes.
Oil and gas,
Yes.
everybody, politicians, non-politicians,
Yes.
yourself, myself, everyone. You know, you said something earlier. You said, well, you're not really an educator, but, you know, you're doing yours through this platform. But this is education. It's no longer a biology teacher in front of a board or a smart board now. It's no longer a chalkboard, but it's no longer that. It's platforms like this. It's soft news. It's the photographer using his picture to tell a story and a child learning from that. So the educational system, the way forward for Nigeria is one that encompasses the intentionality to provide the whole child. It's one that ensures that, yes, the infrastructure, the resources are there. The budget for the country is also put in place to ensure that, you know, our teachers are able to get the training they deserve. It's one that changes the curriculum, as simple as that sounds. But that's the way forward. The way forward is just to put education back at the center of the conversation and just know that no country can grow above or beyond the dumbest person in the country. It's not possible because you're still going to find that person on the street. So you might as well ensure that they have some level of education. And I'm not talking about in the four walls of a classroom. I'm saying some vocational skill that keeps them busy and away from partaking in any ills of the society. I always say, if you a shut door to a classroom is an open door to the arm robber you see on the road. It's as straightforward as that. So you now have to understand the more people we get into a classroom or into some sort of skill and acquisition center, the better for the country. 100%.
It's been so insightful, Ucy. There's so much to learn, and this conversation, we're going to keep having it. You know, definitely. We're going to go on a quick break and we'll be back in a minute.